Our last speaker in this session and webinar is Dr. Namit D'Souza, who's going to be delving in central serous retinopathy. He's a consultant vitreoretina and diabetic retinopathy specialist from Mangalore Retina Care. On to you, doctor.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, Dr. Srinivas, for giving me this opportunity. So last but not the least, I'll be presenting about central serous chorioretinopathy, which is one of the commonest disease which we see as ophthalmologists. So it is characterized by serous retinal detachment, most commonly involving the macular area. It is commonly seen in youngsters between the age of 30 to 50 years. It has a male preponderance, and it is seen bilaterally in about 14 to 30% of these cases. So it comes under the family of pachychoroid disease spectrum, and they share common typical features such as increased choroidal thickness, dilated outer choroidal vessels, attenuation and thinning of choriocapillaries and middle choroidal vessels. So coming to the risk factors, there are a lot of risk factors which are implicated in the development of central serous chorioretinopathy. Basically, the main important risk factors are endogenous and exogenous steroids, which can be intravenous, oral, intra-arterial, or any form of steroid. Any amount of duration is implicated. Type A behavior, aggressive personality, people with the gastroesophageal reflex disorders, pregnancy, sleep disturbance are implicated in the position of CSR. All these have an increased, all these risk factors increase the sympathetic activity. They release the catecholamines and corticosteroids, which have receptors on the choroidal vasculature, and this increases stimulation of this increases the choroidal vascular permeability. Now, if you see this right side lower picture, this is a scan of a classical CSR. You can see that the choroidal vasculature is almost normal in consistency, whereas if you see the upper picture, the choroidal vessels are dilated. These dilated choroidal vessels, they press upon the adjoining choriocapillary layer and they cause ischemia, damage to them. They increase the hydrostatic pressure, thus causing aggression of fluid and thereby resulting in central serous retinopathy. Now, based on the duration and RP changes, CSR is basically classified as acute and chronic. Chronic, we see a lot of RP degeneration, tracts, shallow SRF, and skytic spaces. So clinical course is usually these acute CSRs are self-resolving in 90% of the cases. However, 2 to 9% they end up being chronic, and recurrence is usually seen in about 30 to 50% after 1 year. So symptoms, as you all know, they come with, the patient comes with blurred vision, central scotoma, metamorphopsia, and when we do a refraction, there is a hypermetropic shift. Now, diagnosis is very straightforward. It is clinical, but always remember to do a OCT also when he comes during the first visit, because subtle changes can be seen by OCT, and you can quantify this subretinal fluid while doing the OCT, and it will help in the follow-up whether it is decreasing or it is increasing or remaining the same. Now, FFA is not done at the first visit unless you are contemplating treatment either by laser. Now, coming to the fundus picture, how does it appear? On a slit lamp, 90D slit lamp biomicroscopy, there is an absence of foveal reflex. There is a round, oval, well circumscribed area of SRF that is seen in the center of the macula. The blood vessels are usually elevated at the margins. So as the CSR advances, this is an acute CSR which is seen after a month. There will be some yellowish deposit which are typically fibrin proteins. These cases are likely to convert into chronic CSR. Now, the chronic CSR have a lot of RP disturbance in them. You can see that the SRF is extending beyond the inferior arcade, and there is a lot of RP disturbance. You can see in the lower picture, there are a lot of RP tracks also that are seen. Coming to other forms like bullous CSR, it is an atypical form. It, as the name indicates, it is associated with exudative detachment, and it's commonly seen in people who are on oral steroids. Also, you can typically see subretinal fibrin. You can see it under the superior temporal vascular arcade. and while doing an FFA, you will get multiple leaks. So what do we see? What do we get to see while doing FFA? What information you get is that of a leak. We can know the area of leak in order to do the laser, and we can also know about the chronicity of the CSR, and also know the RP changes that are associated with it. Also, secondary CNVM, which we have missed during our clinical examination, can be found. So, what do we see in a FFA in a typical CSR? This is on top of the my slide is a FFA of a typical CSR, which is typically pinpoint fluorescence, which increases in size and intensity. It is called as the ink blot appearance. It is seen 90% of the in 90% of the cases. Lower down, you can see the smokestack appearance, which with the pinpoint appearance, it becomes vertically displaced, and then it goes horizontal, just like a mushroom shape, and it is called a smokestack. So smokestack is seen in 10% of the subjects, and you can see associated dot hyperfluorescent with window defects, telling us that the CSR is in chronic nature. So FFA in chronic CSR, we can see a lot of early window defects that show us in this FFA. We can see a lot of window defects suggesting that there is a lot of RP damage. Now, it is always a good idea whenever you have an autofluorescent to do it, because it tells us the vitality and the health of the RP. You know that lipofusion, RP contains lipofusion, and that is that's why the RP is damaged here, and that's why it shows a hypoautofluorescence. You can see the hyperautofluorescence at the margin of the CSR, which says that there is overactivity of the surrounding RP cells. Now, coming to the OCT findings, which already has been discussed, you can see that this is a OCT of a classical CSR, wherein there is an elevation of the ellipsoid zone, and what is pushing it is a subretinal fluid, which is hypo-reflective, and you can see lower down, there is a serous PD, which you see in 70% of the cases of CSR, which is also hyper-reflective. Now, coming to chronic OCT in chronic CSR, you can see that there is this is a OCT of a chronic CSR where there are hyper-reflective dots suggesting the photoreceptor damage, and with time it becomes elongated. And on clinical examination, these are seen as yellowish dots. So, what are the red flag signs in CSR? So, hemorrhage is one red flag sign. Always, never CSR is associated with hemorrhage. Whenever there is an hemorrhage, always do an FFA or ICG and rule out CNVM, because the treatment is completely different. Fibrin CSR, sometimes fibrin CSR can mimic CNVM because of the sheer creamish color that it has. So we had a doubt, and we had to clear by doing a fundus fluorescent angiography, which showed us this pinpoint leaking hyperfluorescence, which suggested it to be a CSR. So in this typical patient, we did also a OCT, which showed the vacuole sign, which has the central hyporeflective area surrounded by a hyperreflective area because of the fibrin being displaced by this egress of the SRF. So also you can see there is a break in the RP also. You can also have double layered sign, which shows hyperreflective, which can be hyporeflective or hyperreflective. Hyporeflective double layer sign is typically seen in CSR. We are not worried about it, but when it is hyperreflective, we can say that it is associated with CNVM. Now, differential diagnosis. There are a lot of conditions which mimic these CSR. It can be optic disc. That's why it's a good idea to look at the optic nerve to know whether there's an optic disc pit also. AMD and PC, which I've already discussed, can be differentiated by doing a FFA or an ICG. Inflammatory conditions such as VKH can be differentiated. Sometimes they have VKH have posterior pockets of focal SRF. They can mimic CSR. It can be differentiated by doing a FFA. In posterior ciliarities, they can be posterior pockets, which can be differentiated by doing ultrasound. And also, certain times there are intraocular tumors which wherein an ultrasound, like for example, a choroidal mass, which pushes and causes serous detachment, which can be differentiated by doing an ultrasound. So treatment is very straightforward. Acute CSR is a self-limiting condition. We can always wait, manage conservatively. First episode, manage conservatively, take a good history of medications, that lifestyle changes, counseling, and also OCT has to be done every month. Now, this is a flow chart of how we manage acute CSR. Acute CSR always treat conservatively, do an OCT, repeat OCT every month. If it's improving, follow him up until the every month until the SRF resolves completely. If there is no improvement, of if you are seeing an increase in the SRF, then we should proceed with an FFA. Now, FFA can show us a leak, where the leak site of the leak is. If the extra leak is extrafoveal, we are very happy. We can do a mild laser here by doing using a thermal or a green laser, and the SRF just disappears in a few days' time. Whereas when it's subfoveal, we are in trouble because doing a laser with a green laser can cause scars and decrease in vision. So the only choice is PDT, photodynamic therapy, or micropulse laser, or epineuron medication. So intravitreal anti-VEGF is only resolved in case of secondary, reserved in case of secondary CNVMs. So there are a lot of medical medicines that are available and tried out, but what is of most importance is the epineuron, which is a selective mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist, which acts on the receptors on the choroidal vasculature. It decreases the vascular permeability and thereby resolving the CSR. So the common side effects are hyperkalemia. That's why we have to do a 15-day checkup of his blood electrolytes. Finally, CSR is a complex disease. Multimodal approach and a holistic approach is required for its adequate treatment and to get back the patient's vision, lost vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Srinivas.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Namit. Wonderful presentation. Can you just stop the screen share?
Very extensive talk.
A panel discussion. We'll start with Dr. N.S. Muralidhar, sir. You have points to add. I'm sure there are 4 talks and you must be having a few more points and suggestions from you. We would like to listen from you, sir.
No, I think all the speakers have taken a lot of effort to put together all the points very well. You know, I have very little to add. In fact, I think Dr. Deepti Kulkarni made very good points in terms of diagnosis of ARN and how urgent it is to treat them, because it's a rapidly progressive disease. You know, all types of viral retinitis, whether it is CMV retinitis or whether it's PORN or ARN. Urgent diagnosis is very important, and she stressed that it's a clinical diagnosis and it has to be substantiated by, you know, taking the fluid from the AC or vitreous and getting the PCR, you know, diagnosed, and a timely treatment. And Dr. Divyansh outlined the management of retinoblastoma very well. I have nothing much to add because I don't do retinoblastoma. And Dr. Namit D'Souza nicely summarized the current status of the CSR. In fact, one of the most common comments made by fellows when they join our hospital and work for some time is that they all thought that CSR is a very simple disease to treat. But then once they start seeing the chronic cases and difficult cases, they find it extremely, you know, it's a complex disease. And today the management, you know, is not so easy. We have to look at multimodal imaging and also look at the other differential diagnosis that he highlighted very well. And Dr. Manish Bapai, you know, really showed very challenging situations in the posterior segment so well, especially the foreign bodies, and you know how he manages them. And he also highlighted the importance of examination of the posterior segment. All the speakers have taken a lot of pains to you know, emphasize the salient points. You know, I think they did a very good job.
Dinesh sir, thank you, Muralidhar sir, for contemplating.
I agree with Muralidhar. Actually, there's very little to add to this. You've actually more or less provided an entire book of all these conditions. And so, I mean, I frankly speaking, I don't think there's much to say. It's only a question of now assimilating this information, because there's a lot of information, and how this gets assimilated. And when you present it, you have to know that you present only the salient features. Like, for example, there may be hundreds of differentials, but just the first 3, 4 are the ones which are relevant. And the rest depends on getting if the examiner wants to ask you something. Don't provoke the examiner into asking you something which you know very little about. That is the first lesson about any exam is, don't push the examiner into those areas where you know less. So stick to, sometimes better to speak less and respond to whatever you're asked.
Thank you, sir. Jatinder, sir? You're muted.
Unmute yourself. Jatinder?
I would just like to congratulate everyone. Very nice talks. Particularly impressed with the last session of the talks. Very nicely presented. Very holistic approach. Some points are here and there, but I think we are running quite late. I think everybody wants to get back to their routine. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, ma'am and Srinivas, for letting me be a part of this.
So I think I should come to my conclusion remarks. I mean, it goes without saying that these 2.5 hours have been a brilliant learning webinar. And would you believe it, being a completely anterior segment surgeon, I heard every bit of all that you all spoke, though I don't know how much I'm going to remember, but I would definitely appreciate your quality of work a lot more henceforth. On behalf of ARC, a special thanks to our expert panel, and of course, the wonderful sessions which are so beautifully put together by Srinivas Joshi, that made it all the more interesting. Our thanks are always due to our AIOS admin, which are headed by Mr. Kripal and his team. Mr. Sunil, who's our webinar admin, you must have seen how minutely he associates with each of these webinars and keeps a tab on our time and duration of talks. Sai and Manjula, who do all the background work for ARC, and they definitely help in leading ARC forward. Our deep-felt thanks is to be expressed to NTOD with very, very great conviction, because every single webinar which I've conducted from the beginning of my tenure to now has been sponsored by NTOD, and I'm deeply grateful to them. And finally, most importantly, the only thing which eggs us ARC team forward is the attendees number, which I keep bothering Mr. Sunil to tell me at the end of the show. And I would definitely update you too. It is really, truly encouraging to have so many of them attending. Even now, there were some 300 odd still there, and we started off with very good numbers. Thank you, one and all of you, because it's you who makes these webinars so useful for us. Thank you.